Okay, good evening, everyone. I just want to welcome everyone to this exciting program, the local rapid
Recording in
recovery
progress.
program, sponsored by DHCD. We're going to focus in on tonight on Brant Rock. This program was created to provide every municipality the opportunity to develop an actionable plan based on an actual plan to develop an actual project-based recovery plan. Sounds like a lot, but basically we're going to look at project background, project goals and timelines, diagnostic data, key findings, goal prioritization, and what's next. Now, because we're focusing in on Brant Rock, I did read the presentation, so we actually are going to get into some short-term goals. Tonight you'll hear from the experts on the priorities. So the first priority would be sidewalks. Second is improved wayfinding. Third is protect outdoor dining. Now, there are challenges. Now, that area is prone to a lot of coastal flooding. There's poor and inadequate sidewalks. There's not a lot of trees. Some lighting issues, signage, and things like that. So tonight we'll get into a whole bunch of info on what some of the challenges are, and then how we go turning those challenges into some positive direction to make some improvements, and then come up with this actionable recovery plan tied to economics. So I welcome everyone. I want people, hopefully they'll participate. After the presentation, they'll ask questions. And then the very, very, very exciting part of this presentation is the poll. We'll actually all be able to vote. So thank you, and I'll turn it back to Greg.
Thank you, Michael. Jason or Amelia from Stantec, you have the presentation and the protocols.
Great, thanks, Greg, and thanks again for the introduction, Michael. Just some really fast housekeeping rules. We're going to be sharing with you a lot of information as quickly as we can so we can get to a conversation. During the presentation, if you have any technical questions, just type them into the chat box and we'll periodically look and try to answer them throughout the presentation if anybody is confused by what they see. We will have a poll towards the end. That'll be an automated poll. We'll pop that up for you. And then we'll go into that Q&A afterwards. And of course, like many meetings, just click the raise hand button and we'll recognize you and go off mute and ask your questions and hopefully have a good conversation. Really quickly, I just want to introduce who's involved in this effort. Of course, first and foremost, Greg and Karen, your planners in Marshfield have been invaluable for us, guiding us, helping find good resources and data, good stakeholders to talk with, giving us some tours of Brant Rock. Of course, my name is Jason Schreiber. I'm a senior principal at Stantec, and I'm the designated plan facilitator. The person who's doing all of the heavy lifting is Amelia Casey, key project planner on this effort, and you'll be hearing from both of us throughout this. We are following the protocols and the scope laid out by the state's Department of Housing and Community Development. And much of what you'll see here is what they have tried to establish for this program. So let me walk you through the agenda for this evening really fast. We're going to talk quickly about what background work has been done that's been brought into our work, understand what might be the goals. We've heard from both the application, but others who've developed some preliminary goals, and when and how we will be evolving those and informing that with other pieces of data. We'll share with you some of the data collection that we've already done. And then we'll get into those discussions after we summarize those key findings. We want to be able to prioritize those goals with all of you through a polling process and a discussion. And we'll wrap it up with a summary of what's next. Let me briefly summarize for you first how we got here. So first of all, the program, as Michael illuminated, is actually a pretty significant statewide program. Over $10 million in technical assistance has been designated by DHCD. We are one of those technical assistance consultants. and we're working for Marshfield, who is designated as a medium-sized community. There are over 120 communities receiving these grants. They are focused specifically on how communities can recover from COVID and work smartly for their futures, to think very cleverly about the future and integrate projects that are, as Michael said, actionable, so that maybe when there's another round of funding and for any other projects that are happening in the state and in Marshfield, you'll have a plan that can hit the road quickly to be able to get those funds and get things done as fast as possible. Next slide just summarizes a little bit of what I've already said, but just so you know, when we go through the goals, as I'll share with you in a minute, behind that is already some discussions with stakeholders. We've also looked at previous studies and other data collected in the field. We've had people out there with tablets doing observations of all the businesses in Brant Rock. We've been pulling in some national data sets and state data sets to understand demographics and how the retail market is going. And there's been a business survey, a couple of businesses responded to. All of this leads us to some initial goals that we really think should be on the table. But first, the state has a number of goals for this program that are worth reviewing quickly. So the state's program is about encouraging business competitiveness. Many downtowns, Brant Rock and others throughout the Commonwealth, have been hit by COVID. The lack in reduction in restaurant sales and retail sales has been felt in many, many places. It may continue to be felt. And the state is very interested in maintaining the vibrancy of its communities, keeping people employed, even addressing the housing crisis. This plan is about the data to be able to come up with the right types of strategies, not only for the town of Marshfield to pursue in Brant Rock, but for the state to fund, to be able to create the right streams and maybe balance how they support projects statewide. So let's talk specifically about Brant Rock. The next slide is the study area for Brant Rock. It's focused almost exclusively on the commercial district, with everything from the green of the Union Chapel on the north down through Town Pier Road on the south, the Light Tower on the east, beach parking on the west. And while it includes some residences in that boundary, we're really only focused on the business environment. We want to know how it connects to the residential environment, but truly we're really focused on the commercial and economic aspects of Brant Rock. There's a lot of good information that we have to go on. Yeah, go ahead, Amelia. That slide is a summary of just some of the background documents that we have access to for this program. And in particular, you may all be aware the BU process just finished up. Students provided a lot of good fact-finding as well as recommendations, and those have helped to inform us. As we get into the next phase of our work, we may be using some of those students' ideas as part of building out an action plan for you. But we also have a lot of data collection we're going to talk about here today, and we will be seeking additional input from folks on the phone here today in future meetings in the coming months. We are open to any and all forms of input. So if there's other good pieces of data, as we've collected along the way, we will continue to receive them. The next slide actually summarizes the application that was received by the DHCD. And it summarized in a short narrative 3 categories of priority around short and long-term improvements. Essentially, all of these requests were focused on the public realm, and that seems to be something that people are very, very concerned about. But we've talked with stakeholders, we looked at a lot of the background data, and we recognize that there's probably more to the recovery of Brant Rock than just these. So the next slide summarizes the draft goals that we've put together. These are not finalized, and these may be adjusted, but you'll have an opportunity to go through these in detail at the end of the presentation. Suffice it to say, the first 3 goals reflect directly what was in that application, but other goals include those associated with directly supporting businesses, helping Brant Rock deal with stormwater, both at the private business level as well as the broader public infrastructure level, because obviously coastal flooding is a huge part of the story in Brant Rock. And lastly, also recognizing that there's been many concerns about how the roads function, how parking can be used, particularly on busy summer days. These types of goals, and maybe others that we'll identify today, are really designed to help support the state's overall goals for its program. The next slide shows our schedule. We are at the end of our diagnostics phase. That was just Stantec out there collecting as much data as we possibly could. We're going to share that with you, and we will then move on to phase 2. That's where there's this ideation process where we're going to start identifying what types of projects might work in Brant Rock. There are a number of subject matter experts that have been hired by the state that are available to Brant Rock. And as we get into this process, we may ask them if there's a stormwater expert, if there's a business or facade improvement expert, if there's somebody who knows about mobility, we can have them come and provide expert advice. They'll counsel members of the town, stakeholders, local businesses, anybody as needed, with all of that culminating in phase 3, a concrete, specific, actionable plan with as many details as possible, as close to implementable as a plan can ever be. We're going to walk you now through the diagnostics data. They were collected in 4 major categories over the course of the last month and a half. Some basic information about the market of customers and people who use Brant Rock, stories about the physical environment, the actual private business environment, and also the administrative capacity of the town and other organizations to support the economic revitalization of Brant Rock. The next slide is just a quick list of a subset of all the types of data, and I'm not going to review all of this with you. There's many, many more check marks. It's actually dozens of rows in a large spreadsheet that the state is calling through right now as part of them trying to figure out what is the next funding program. So I'm going to first share with you summaries of the market data, and this is pretty important. So the market for Brant Rock is in 4 geographies roughly. One is shown in orange, as you saw in that earlier map, just the Brant Rock commercial zone itself. Surrounding that is something we're just calling the beach area, the adjacent neighborhoods within 1.5 miles up and down the coast within Marshfield. And then there's the town of Marshfield itself, and lastly, of course, the state of Massachusetts. So the first slide is on what is the customer base for Brant Rock. It's the population trends. Amelia, if you can, there we go. So this is the growth of population of the nearby beach market, because we know Brant Rock itself, we're not counting the residents. So we're looking at the area that surrounds it. And it actually, as much as it's projected to grow just a couple hundred more residents, is a pace that eclipses that of Marshfield itself and of the state. So it says that not only in the past, but into the future, there will be a higher growth rate of people moving into the beach area. That's a market for Brant Rock, and it may not be a market that has been realized to its fullest potential by businesses, which is what we're starting to investigate. The next slide talks about the household sizes of the beach area relative to Marshfield and the state, and they're all the same. They're relatively at that number 2.5 or so. That's an important finding because it says that the beach area is not just about seasonal homes, and it's not just about transients. There is a community here. This is a place that mirrors much of Marshfield, and that's important. And what's also interesting on the next slide is that the beach area and Marshfield are not, like many other places that are suffering economic stress, places that are aging in place. The median age is only a little bit above the statewide average, which includes all sorts of college towns and students throughout the Commonwealth. This says to us that you have a market that's very similar in its potential to other places that may be doing better off than Brant Rock is. The last slide I'll share with you before I turn it over to Amelia has to do with the retail spending opportunity in the area, which is basically to say that the median household incomes in Brant Rock and in nearby Marshfield are at or above the statewide average, and home values are also in that range, maybe a little bit above. But what's also interesting here is that the number of employees in the beach area, 909 there, is only about 1/4 of the total number of residents in the beach area. What that means is that you actually have a pretty high ratio of employees to residents. This is a place that people go to, and that's why there's so many businesses and restaurants for the number of people who live in that beach area. It's a destination. And so that ratio 1:4 is way above what we normally think of 1:7 for just an average live work kind of environment. It says that Brant Rock has an opportunity to do very well. And a lot of what we may need to fix has to do with Brant Rock itself. So I'll turn it back over to Amelia to talk about the public and private realms and what our data collectors observe.
Thanks, Jason. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about all of the private and public realm data that we collected. Essentially, we sent some data collectors out in the Brant Rock study area to do a very comprehensive and thorough analysis of all of your sidewalks, all of your facades, storefronts, everything that incorporates kind of that public and private realm environment. I think someone is not on mute. Oh, there we go. All right, so the first thing that we looked at are sidewalks. So sidewalks are an important asset in a downtown, and in particular in Brant Rock, because they help connect all of the different storefronts and most importantly, connect visitors and residents to your area and to your businesses. So we wanted to take a look at this to understand, all right, how does this look in Brant Rock and what kind of scale or rating did you receive? So the ratings that we were instructed to categorize or rank each of these assets by was on the A, B, C, and F level. We took that a little bit further. We were analyzing our public and private realm data and kind of considered a bunch of different factors in that. So in particular for sidewalks, we wanted to look at the width, the condition, accessibility, infrastructure to come up with this strong grade to understand really what's going on. So overall, out of all of the sidewalks in Brant Rock, you received a grade of C, which means that these assets and the sidewalks in Brant Rock are not necessarily conducive to connecting those businesses and the visitors and residents to each other. And we've, in each of these public and private realm indicators, we've added a few photos to kind of provide a justification for these grades and to call out, all right, why did you receive an A, B, C, or F? The next public realm infrastructure indicator are street trees and benches. So these types of indicators are great to provide, amenities in a town center, particularly in Brant Rock, for those who are walking through, who are hanging out at the beach, visiting kind of nearby residences. So these, help to beautify a downtown. And in Marshfield, in particular, Brant Rock, we noticed that you received a score of C, which means there are pretty limited amenities related to benches and street trees in the area. We know this is a particularly different environment. We're working in communities such as Worcester, which don't really have to deal with coastal flooding. So we recognize that there are no street trees in the area, but also are keeping in mind that, you're undergoing and have to experience different environmental factors versus other communities. Next public realm indicator is lighting. So lighting is very important, again, when it comes to accessibility, visibility, safety, something, you know, when there are visitors in later hours, you want to make sure that you have not only historic and quaint lighting structures, but they also make people feel safe when they're walking from their parking space to a restaurant. So in Brant Rock, again, you received a score of C. Lighting in this area is very favored heavily towards vehicles. So they're located, you know, lighting on utility poles, on major roadways. There aren't necessarily kind of lower lighting that help connect all the different businesses or on sidewalks to help visitors and residents feel like they can safely and visibly connect to their destination of choice. The additional element is wayfinding and signage. So again, another very important, you know, component for the construction of a downtown, because they help intercept visitors, help people figure out, you know, where they want to go, what types of destinations are in the area, whether it be recreational or restaurants or beaches. So having kind of a great wayfinding and signage program is something that can really help to boost kind of the aesthetic or the environment of a town and make it more attractive for visitors. So again, Brant Rock received a score of C, although you have some great signage for the Harbor Walk, for some of your greener spaces. There's no consolidated comprehensive signage that, you know, intercepts those who are coming in from Dyke Road or coming in from, you know, other residences and neighborhoods to figure out, all right, what have we got in downtown? We know we have rocky roads, hadads, but, you know, it's hard for visitors to tell what's really going on or how far away parking is from their destination. And the final public element is roadbed / crossways, crosswalks. So the state decided to combine this element, you know, to focus on infrastructure and in particular mobility. So it's really important to have good, strong, you know, roadways that are well maintained and visible crosswalks, again, to really make an attractive downtown so that visitors can feel like they can park at a destination and walk throughout a downtown or through Brant Rock to all the various restaurants or stores. So you received a score of B for this asset. You do have pretty well maintained roads and crosswalks, and they're visible. As you can see here, you've got this, you know, pretty streamlined painting and pavement markings for your crosswalk. It's not perfect, you know, an A score will receive. You have great crosswalks that are well maintained. You've got raised streets, that type of a ranking, but you still got a B, which is good. So we'll sum up each of our public and private findings. You know, that it's a lot to throw at you, and there's a lot that goes into this. So we wanted to kind of summarize all of this up and understand, all right, what are the major findings from all this? So in general, we kind of noticed that the sidewalk network and sidewalks in Brant Rock between facilities and between residences and businesses, it's relatively disconnected. You know, you have a well-maintained sidewalk on the side of the western side of Ocean Street that has hadads and rocky roads and Venus, but then on the other side, it's a little bit more difficult if you're trying to walk across the street or walk from your resident to the jetty. It's a little bit difficult. You don't necessarily have a sidewalk and don't necessarily feel safe. Again, although you do have nice, well-painted crosswalks, there's an opportunity to make these a little bit more accessible. Add some warning signs, some various curb ramps to make it just a little bit more attractive for those who are frequenting businesses by walking. Another observation that we noticed is that streetscape amenities are definitely not as present as they could be. There's an opportunity here to increase some trees, and, you know, again, as Jason mentioned, with the subject matter experts, we can look into what type of trees and landscaping could you implement in Brant Rock to make sure that it's resilient, but also attractive. And then last but not least, wayfinding. We also think that there's a great opportunity here to create a strong wayfinding program to let visitors know what's in Brant Rock, how they can get there, walking distance. So again, these are some takeaways that we found from public realm. So we can pause here for a little bit and talk about this if anyone has any other questions.
Yeah,
about this.
I don't see anything
Nothing
in
in
the
chat?
chat. Yeah, I don't see anything in the chat. So unless there's like some clarifications on the data, I figure we might as well keep on moving to the end of our presentation so we can get into a broader Q&A. But again,
And Jason, there's no emails and there's no hands raised.
okay, great. So again, if anybody has any questions, throw them in the chat and we'll try to address them. Keep going, Amelia.
All right, so now we're moving into the private realm. This looked at data at a storefront level. So walking through Brant Rock, block by block, and figuring out how many businesses do you have, what do they look like, how are they maintained, how can we, help to analyze the storefronts in Brant Rock. So we first took a look at windows. Having attractive windows is important to attract visitors. If they can see what's going on inside a restaurant, if they see if there are, if it's busy during peak seasons. So this is something important that we noticed and that the state wanted us to record. So we noticed that you actually received a score of B, which is great. Again, not an A, it's not perfect, but few communities are perfect. So a B score is good in that you do have well-maintained and great-looking signage. It's transparent. It lets visitors and those frequenting the businesses know what's going on, what's in there, what they can get. So that is definitely a good score. The next one is outdoor display and dining. So this again was at a storefront level, figuring out, all right, do they have signage or outdoor dining facilities to really, again, make it attractive for those who are walking around Brant Rock. You received a score of B for this. There's definitely an opportunity to enhance that outdoor dining, but still you've got some very attractive outdoor spaces for people to walk around, to hop across and frequent different businesses, and allow people to eat both inside and outside, especially during this time of COVID when people aren't necessarily feeling comfortable to eat inside yet. Another private realm indicator is signage. So again, specific to the store, making sure that there's no signage clutter, that those who are frequenting the businesses know what type of items they can purchase or what type of storefront it actually is. So you received a score of B for this. You have really great signage unique to each destination and storefront. We thought that people can get a good understanding of each business and their type and their products. And they also can be easily seen from, the head-on parking or the sidewalks across the street. Another indicator for the private realm is awnings. Again, this is something that is really different in Brant Rock because you have to deal with constant wind, you deal with storms. So the maintenance of awnings in Brant Rock is definitely different than a town like Apple. So you received a score of C for this private realm indicator. There aren't too many awnings in the area. There's a little bit of a mix of either, wooden structures coming out from the actual facade itself or no awnings at all. So it's definitely, again, an opportunity to figure out how to solve this issue. Another element is facade. So this is probably one of the most important private realm elements. So the state wanted us to look at facade to understand if it's well maintained at a storefront level, if it's run down. This all helps to improve the vitality of Brant Rock and making sure that it's attractive for those who want to come visit Brant Rock. So you received a score of C for this. So some of the stores and businesses require, some significant upgrades, but again, this is an issue that really all ties back to storm events and how businesses can deal with that and create resilient designs. So,
Amelia, Jason, we do have a hand up.
Oh, great.
Shannon?
Hi, this is Nicholas Dressat. I'm just using my wife's phone. How are we all doing this evening?
Good, thank you.
I want to thank the town for recognizing Brant Rock, first of all. And I just didn't want to interrupt too much, but all the examples are street level examples. unfortunately, in this area, we obviously have to deal with a lot of FEMA regulations. A lot of these things are nice at street level, but we got to be above sea level for anything that is built new construction. So I don't know if we could talk more about that.
Yeah, so we're definitely going to talk about strategies that deal with that issue in particular as part of the next phase of this project. Part of the goal of this phase in this presentation is to sort of lay the groundwork for what may need to be fixed. We're trying to do it as quantitatively as possible. So yeah, I mean, I think in the future that may be one way of dealing with stormwater.
Okay, so
Storm
My
events, I think, is a better way of putting it,
okay.
with the FEMA regulations.
So my question is, if the town is gonna, which I'm encouraging 100%, Brant Rock needs to be revitalized, and my brothers and I are in the process of trying to revitalize it, and we're excited about that the town's getting involved. But if we have to build our project at a certain height, and the town wants to put street lights at a certain level, you know, that's not going to look aesthetically correct, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. So again, I don't want to comment about specific solutions tonight.
Okay.
I think a lot of people will have ideas for specific solutions, and what you're talking about are just a few of hundreds that I can propose to all of you in our next set of meetings in about a month or so.
Okay. All right. Then I will just listen. Thank you.
No problem.
Amelia, you're going to just sort of summarize the kind of the takeaways here. And I think
Yep.
it's important to recognize what he was just saying. I mean, you know, these businesses and the observations that were made by our data collection team absolutely are impacted by coastal flooding. And I think that's an important part of this.
Mhm. So recapping a little bit of the private realm indicators, you know, there is a strong business presence. You've got some unique signage. You have, you know, well-maintained, relatively well-maintained facades. However, there's definitely a need to, you know, create a comprehensive business or district-wide business presence, you know, to create some sort of continuity and collaboration between all of the businesses in Brant Rock to, you know, achieve that overall goal of revitalization. There are also few, you know, customer amenities for those who want to frequent all the various restaurants and businesses. So again, this ties into the public realm a little bit with the street benches and the trees, but we just wanted to connect that and kind of bring that to everyone's attention. And then there's also an opportunity for outdoor dining. You have a lot of right-of-way and pavement that could potentially be used for outdoor dining. I know we've talked a bit about this already, you know, with stakeholders, and there's a great opportunity to promote this. So we just wanted to, again, highlight this and call it out. So I'll pass it back to Jason, who will talk a little bit more about the specifics for businesses. Then we can always hop back and we'll kind of roll it all up into a key findings after
Yeah, we'll be done here in just a few minutes so we can get into more conversation. So the next phase of evaluation, or I'm sorry, the next diagnostics category has to do with business activity and what is the overall business environment. While we do not know the details of retail sales, we are able to access databases such as CoStar that record publicly available sales tax information and business registrations, et cetera. And they say that within Brant Rock, there's 12 businesses, you know, that are just where there are business licenses. There may be fewer or more, but that's a good rough number. You know, sometimes a building has a couple storefronts, but it's listed as one business. But generally, that seems to match with what we see in the field. We don't have any data specifically about who closed during COVID, but anecdotally, we all know, for instance, that Haddad's actually closed for a couple of months during the winter for the first time in recent memory. And that certainly speaks to the drop off in restaurant sales. And there are at least a couple vacant storefronts. Again, it's a seasonal environment, so we can't be 100% certain of which of those will actually be back in the summer or not, but it certainly may be a sign of a lasting impact, and it is a sign of potential opportunity. The next slide talks about retail leakage. This is a evaluation, again, using sort of the back end data that says, based on the number of customers in the area and the amount of sales tax receipts, employees, and other information, based on where people spend their money, Brant Rock's beach area in general, it could expand retail sales fairly significantly. These are measures of 0 to 100, kind of a percentage basis. And Marshfield, that is true as well. What this basically says is that Marshfield, and in particular the beach areas, are more oriented towards residential activity, as we discussed earlier. And even that 1-to-4 ratio of jobs to residents might be able to be increased significantly in order to take up this excess retail demand. It's something that the businesses might be very interested in, at least taking up a portion of it to help resolve some of those potential vacancies. The last category the state asked us to look at, and we're continuing to have this ongoing conversation, is administrative capacity within the town and local business organizations, nonprofits, whomever, to provide support for businesses and infrastructure. What does that mean? So administrative capacity from the state's perspective is, who are the stewards, who are the leaders, who are the people who are going to really take it under their mantle to promote growth and to promote stability and even recovery in Brant Rock? Is there staffing for that? Is there the right kind of rules and regulations for that? The gentleman who was just talking about the rules related to flood zones. Do those things need to be able to change, or do we have to figure out different forms of approaching those rules in order to be able to keep Brant Rock vital? And of course, lastly, is there anybody who's working for this district? These are the boxes that we're supposed to fill out for the state, and they're empty because there is not an organization that's specifically dedicated to marketing Brant Rock, to supporting its businesses, to it being a Main Streets organization that's worrying about the public realm, or even the community worrying about its infrastructure. You're just part of a larger chamber. There is a village association, but it's more based on what the residents have done. And the town can only do so much. Brant Rock is part of all of its jurisdiction. So this is a clear area where maybe we can identify organizations, but maybe it's actually an opportunity for additional organizations. And with that, we'll end on the last piece of data, which actually the state did not ask us to do at all, but it's quite evident already, as one person has suggested, the climate. Go ahead.
All right, so we worked with Greg and Karen to figure out, what resources can we look at to figure out what is happening in terms of coastal flooding, because obviously this is something that is always going to happen. It's very prevalent all times of the year. So we wanted to acknowledge this and make sure we incorporate it into our issues and opportunities and eventually our project recommendations. So I'm sure, as you all know, the study area itself, which is highlighted on the right, is in the high-risk coastal area zone. So I'm sure, as most of the businesses know, they experience this annually, very frequently. Another component that we looked at is coastal erosion. This kind of is a great indicator of how you can tweak and kind of amend your zoning standards, particularly for those businesses that are right up against the beach there. So not surprisingly, the study area experiences up to almost 3 feet of coastal erosion per year. So that's pretty drastic and really impacts what type of businesses are there and want to come to Brant Rock. And finally, we looked at storm inundation. So we looked at the Boston Harbor flood risk model, which essentially, as you can see on the kind of scale on the bottom, the percentages are your percentage of getting wet during a storm event. So as you can see, you've got present day all the way to 2070. Already, currently, you're experiencing almost a 100% chance of getting wet during a storm event in the study area. And that's only going to get worse. You know, it impacts the private side, the businesses themselves, and it also impacts the public elements and infrastructure as well if you do not have them set up to, you know, be resilient and provide, you know, access in and out of Brant Rock during those storm events. And that is it in terms of all of the data that we had for you. Now we'll get into kind of the fun part where we look at our overall key findings and kind of do a recap of the goals, how they align with the scores and rankings that we gave you, and you know where we can go from there, figuring out, identifying those issues, and working through the rest of phase 1 to get to phase 2 of project ideation. So we've kind of rolled it all up here for all of the different categories that we looked at. So the market side and administrative side of things, you've got a growing population, both in Brant Rock and at a regional level. However, although retail activity is relatively declining, there are some vacancy. It's a different environment where it's focused in kind of a peak season. So that's something that's different for other communities that we are looking at. On the flip side, you know, making a more marketable and attractive Brant Rock will help to improve those unemployment rates that we showed you earlier in the customer base slides. And again, just to reiterate, there is no real, you know, consolidated Brant Rock Business Association or Main Streets that is helping to improve and revitalize Brant Rock. In terms of the public and private realm data that we looked at, you know, most of these businesses are seasonal. You've got some signage and nice and well-maintained facades, but it's not necessarily, you know, agglomerated into the overall vision of Brant Rock. It's more kind of at a storefront level, how it's managed and maintained. And overall, you know, I feel like the outdoor dining situation could definitely, you know, be improved. People love this with COVID, you know, being able to eat outside. So I think there's an opportunity there that, especially during the peak season, for I'm sure you're getting lots of visitors during the summer. From the public side, the roadways and the infrastructure definitely lean heavy towards, you know, prioritizing vehicles. So there's a great chance to enhance your crosswalks and your sidewalks to make it more attractive for those who are, you know, frequenting various businesses, going to the beach or the recreational facilities, or coming down for the great events that take place in Brant Rock. And of course, as we just kind of, you know, gave an overview of, sea level rise is ever present in Brant Rock, will always, you know, occur, potential to get worse. So we want to make sure that we're helping to create some project recommendations that focus on resilient design and helping your businesses prepare for storm events.
Thanks, Amelia. So we're going to step into this goal prioritization exercise now. This is, you know, I want to take a little bit of time for everybody to walk through these. I'm not sure that everybody has video. They may be on the phone. So I'm going to ask Amelia to read each of the goals. We don't want to take too much time because we want you guys to be able to participate in the poll that's associated with this. And Amelia, after each goal, you can briefly summarize the scores associated with that, but you know, keep it brief so that everybody can get on to the exercise.
Mm-hmm. And I'll explain kind of how the poll works, and it'll be easy for everyone to kind of answer. So we've got our first goal, which is create safe walkways and accessible pedestrian facilities and improve multimodal connections. So over on the right, for those who have video, can see these various icons and colored boxes. That relates to the ratings that you received. So, you know, your sidewalks, streetscape amenities received a score of C. So, you know, it's the walking environment in Brant Rock is relatively unsafe and does not necessarily prioritize pedestrians or those who bike. The second goal is to develop a streamlined wayfinding program for destinations, town amenities, and parking facilities. So again, related to all of the diagnostic assets that we looked at. So wayfinding, which received a score of C. However, on the flip side, the private realm signage at a storefront level received a B. So, you still need some placemaking. It's good at a storefront level, but not really holistically throughout Brant Rock. Third goal is provide protected and dedicated spaces for outdoor dining. So you received a B for storefront level outdoor dining. However, facades and lighting definitely need to be improved. If you have these outdoor facilities, you need to make sure that there are adequate, outdoor amenities for those dining outside. Fourth is expand retail activity and support existing businesses in the Brant Rock area. So again, all of the different icons that relate to this goal are obviously focused on the private realm side. So, a mix of B and C's for facades, awnings. In general, there are upgrades needed. Fifth goal is to promote flexible development opportunities that incorporate resilient designs. So there's not a DHCD diagnostic for this, but I'm sure everyone can say this receives a score of F, where there's definitely a need to promote resilient designs and make sure that developers and businesses have the tools and resources to create development that is resilient. Sixth goal is to enhance infrastructure, storefronts, businesses, and developments to become more resilient against storm events. Related to goal 5 a little bit, again, receives that score of F, no particular DHCD diagnostic, but we want to highlight that we're aware that businesses do struggle and have a hard time coping with being resilient against these storm events and coastal flooding. And the last goal is to provide more roadway and parking accessibility and capacity for visitors frequenting businesses and storefronts. This ties to the roadbed and crosswalks public realm indicator. Existing parking facilities don't necessarily have proper signage for who or who not could park in those facilities, whether it's the head-on or the surface lot on Dyke Road. And it's slightly difficult, and confusing from a circulation perspective for those trying to frequent Brant Rock. So on that note, what I'm going to do now is attempt to share a poll. So in this poll, you'll have 7 questions. Each will be the goals. And then on a scale of 1 to 5, you'll rate if this is not important, with 1 being not important, and it says this in the poll, to 5 being very important. So 3 would be, I don't really have an opinion, 4 would be somewhat important, and 2 would be not as important.
So I want to emphasize one thing as Amelia pulls this up. The reason we're doing this is actually very, very, very important to being able to create an actionable plan. If people are focused on one goal more than another, that is going to help us recognize that projects associated with that goal are more important than projects associated with a goal that doesn't score as well. So as we start to get into solutions, we want to be able to make a ranking of things that really follows what you all feel is important to address. And that's why we're going through this exercise. It's really vital, because if we just start jumping into solutions for Brant Rock, we're not going to have the right framework for that to be a successful application for funding, a successful infrastructure strategy, a successful approach to business vitalization. That's really what this is about. Launch the poll, Amelia. I hope people understand why we think this is important. And after this poll, we will go ahead and have a broader discussion. Everybody can obviously fill out the poll themselves on screen. I hope if you have any problems, raise your hand or just come off of mute and ask. We will give everybody plenty of time to work through this poll and to begin filling it out. If everything is important and everything is a 5 for you, that's great. Nobody should feel restricted in what they're offering. If you think there's goals we're missing, we're about to talk about those and see if other items don't fall within these categories or we need an entire new 8th, 9th, or 10th category. So please take your time to go through each and every one of these goals and tell us how important it is.
Mm-hmm. So it should have popped up on your screen. Don't be scared by the time. That's time elapsed. So it's not counting down from anything. So we have all the time in the world. I can see as of right now, 3 of 14 people have responded. So we can take as much time as we need. And then I believe we'll be able to share these results live. So
yes. I have a hand.
Sandra.
Hi, yes. Can I ask a question?
Please.
So I'm a homeowner and I just saw this meeting posted on the Marshfield Town website and thought it would be interesting. But I'm just curious in looking at the participants, why I do not see more of people I know are Brant Rock business owners on here. Did they receive personal invitations or was this all reviewed with them previously? Just curious about that. Thank you.
I mean, I think Greg can talk to that. You know, there's been a lot of effort to try to reach out to businesses through this. Because they're seasonal, a lot of business owners are really hard to even reach until, you know, we get after Memorial Day, unfortunately.
Jason, we did email a number of businesses. Michael Moresco also reached out to the various businesses. We had a BU student study that was going on just before this. And at first there was a little confusion by some of the people asking what's going on, why is there 2 different studies and stuff. Again, we've done the best we could to get people, especially the businesses, involved. We've reached out to the Chamber of Commerce. They've been active in it as well.
And let me reiterate, tonight's voting for these goals is not the only time that people are going to weigh in on them. It's a great opportunity for everybody who is here for themselves to be heard. But you know, when we get even to the project ideation phase, we're still going to list the goals and how they ranked on early voting. Let people, you know, chime in. Hopefully, we might even be able to be in person. We will see. And let people, you know, and hopefully it's the business owners themselves that we'll go to expressly to have conversations with and to let them see these goals and see what they agree with. And if their priorities are different, we'll note that. And those priorities may vary. Residents may have one set of priorities, business owners may have another. While we're focused on the business zone around the Esplanade, you know, any resident who's lived there for any length of time knows everything for the most part about how businesses might be able to succeed based on a lot of what we've talked about here today. So, you know, even if you don't own a business and you're just a resident, you're a resident expert on most of these business related categories.
Sandra, did that help you with the question?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Looks like we have 11 of 14, and I know Jason, Greg, Karen, and I count as some of those numbers. So if anyone,
we're actually 17 total, and it's voting. Is that right?
there's 11.
I was not voting, so.
Right. I can't vote either. So
I can't vote. Yeah.
I think the number we need to get to is 14 to let everybody. So that's all right. There's no rush here. This is a great time for a bio break if anybody needs one. I will commit that we do not restart for 3 full minutes from this moment.
I had a quick question.
Please.
Yeah.
I'm trying to raise the hand here, but I couldn't find that anywhere.
It worked. We heard you. Go ahead.
First of all, it was a great presentation, and certainly appreciate everyone's involvement here. As of course, Brant Rock is a beautiful area in Marshfield. And Greg, I know, first of all, I'm sorry, this is Stephen Drasopoulos from the Venus too. Greg, I know probably 5+ years now. We met a few times in your office regarding the BRVO and when it first started. So it's come a long way, and my family and myself are looking forward to doing the big project down here. But what is extremely concerning, and Amelia, you touched base on this just a little bit ago, is the flooding, and I think a lot of that can be resolved on two things, and I think this is an important aspect before we start really getting involved here. One is the drainage system down here in Brant Rock, and two, if this is a potential avenue, but maybe some fill down here in Brant Rock to kind of level it off prior to investing a lot into a gigantic project. But mainly a lot of it is the drainage system, and probably a redevelopment of the drainage system if we're going to go pretty in depth into kind of restructuring or redeveloping this section of Marshfield, especially when we're directly across from the ocean. We're approaching here a half a century of being in business, and I can assure you, I'm not that old, but I've seen dozens upon dozens of floods down here in Brant Rock, and some of these, and I will say some of these, are just on a full moon night with no storm, no nor'easter coming up the coast. It's just the parking lots are flooded from the high tides and the poor drainage, and I think that it needs to be addressed prior to kind of divulging into a gigantic project. I wanted to know your thoughts on that.
So let me first handle that, Greg. I mean, I think, Greg, you can answer a lot of the specifics because you know the details of where that water might ever drain to if drainage were to actually improve, which my understanding is the broader issue is that the water table is up so high during those high tides that there's really no velocity for drainage, and that solutions to extricate that water faster do really get into expensive things like pumps, and eventually you're talking about protection. I will say this, all of those types of solutions are viable potentially, and definitely expensive. They're only stopgap solutions for what we're seeing in terms of the extreme storms and just overall sea level rise. Obviously, all you have to do is look at the aerial history of Brant Rock, and you slowly see more and more water in every aerial picture that's been taken for the last 15 years, as I've done. It is not going to stop. So part of what we want to also think about is solutions that will allow you to survive with storms and with water. There's lots of excellent precedents, mostly.
Does this guy know the plans?
But some from domestic locations where places are very floodable, where businesses are very flexible, where a lot of activity that is more infrastructure based is on maybe an upper floor, and then the ground floors are places that kind of have a changing and more active nature, which might actually be compatible with a lot of the things that we've talked about here. I think the solutions for Brant Rock need to be very comprehensive. And we can talk a little bit about potential solutions here tonight. Obviously, our emphasis is trying to get the goals right. And it's sounding to me that, and I haven't seen the scoring yet, but we've already heard that the flooding related goals seem to be coming up or talked about a lot. So I'm going to expect that those score very well. I think our polling has more or less stopped and we're past the bio break date time. What I'd like to ask before Amelia ends the poll, is there anybody who would still like to keep the poll open before we see the results? Please speak out. I see one raised hand. Anybody else raise your hand before we end the poll?
So we have the one raised hand. It's not Shannon.
Yeah, that's fine. I was just raising because my brother touched on the points that I was going to talk about. So I'm going to lower my hand.
Okay. We'll get into that more for sure. Is there anybody who's still trying to finish the survey? Okay. Hearing none. Let's end that polling and see what those results are. I'm not quite sure how well it's going to summarize. I guess you're going to scroll through this, Amelia.
Yeah. Say, can you see my screen of
Yeah.
all the? Okay, cool. That's
At least
great.
I can. Can everybody see that on screen?
Yeah, looks good from here.
Great. So there you go.
Yeah.
Very important for us to create safe walkways. That makes sense. Keep going, Amelia. You can walk us through it.
Yep. So we've got second goal of improving wayfinding. That got very important. That went out. For the third goal of dedicated space for outdoor dining, it's relatively important to people. Fourth goal of expanding retail activity and supporting existing businesses. Not surprisingly, got 5, very important. And a lot of people, picked that as a very important goal. Fifth goal of incorporating resilient design, got a 9. So very important, again, for many participants. Second to last goal of enhancing infrastructure, businesses, developments to become more resilient against storm events. This looks like it got the highest numbers of very important, probably not surprising. So that is definitely a very important goal for all. And last but not least, providing more roadway and parking accessibility and capacity for visitors frequenting businesses and storefronts. This got somewhat important to people. So around 6 respondents picked that. So great. I think, I don't know how these are saved. I definitely want to save them.
Yeah, so I'm just quickly doing some print screens.
Yeah.
For some reason, everything doesn't quite save correctly.
Yeah, we use Teams, so Zoom polling is relatively new. So I don't want to exit out of this and lose this forever.
All right, looks like I have been able to save all of it on my end in case. So
okay, great. I'm going to stop sharing results.
I just had a quick question too, real quick. Is going to be future meetings and more of these?
Let's quickly run through the last slides, Amelia, just to let people know what's going on. Then we can get into a quick conversation. So the end of this is what's next, and just briefly, this is just phase 1. So phase 2 is where we get into these project recommendations, as we talked about, and then phase 3 is when we're going to document that. That we'll do at the end of the summer. So go to the next slide, Amelia. Just so you know, during phase 2, we have access, and anybody here in the town, we can all collaborate and request from the state access to these subject matter experts in all sorts of worlds of specialty, and probably things not even shown here, depending on what the requests are. So it could be people about helping with a business succeed. It could be about public realm design. It could be storm infrastructure, all sorts of things. So as we start to hear from people over the course of the next month or 2 months on, what they think are the best solutions, we can get a subject matter expert in this. I'm obviously already going to be asking about coastal resilience subject matter experts. And then I think the next slide just shows the overall project schedule. Is that right, Amelia? Yeah. Mm-hmm. That process begins more or less today. Between now and about July 4th or so, we're going to be doing a lot of work. We're probably going to come back to you to schedule another community meeting. We want to do that before the summer gets into full swing. This will be where we take everything we're hearing today, other ideas we've had, things we've seen in documents, try to organize it according to the goal voting that we did today, and then put that all in front of you to see if these are the right answers or not. What are the ideas and what are the types of solutions out there? And then we'll have some of those experts come in and work with the town and others as need be, because we want to be able to present sort of the draft plan sometime in the summer. Now this says early July. Really, it's only because the state wants to see if they can get everything wrapped up in August. My guess is, particularly in a community like this, July will be a hard time to do that, so we may push things back. but this is the schedule. It's actually very aggressive from here on in. So let's just open it up now for general conversation and questions. Obviously, you know, a lot of people were talking about the importance, the extreme importance of dealing with flooding. I would say that, you know, unanimity was there in 4s and 5s, much so than almost any other goal. And so that's an important thing to talk about. We've heard a few ideas. I threw out some out there about floodable infrastructure. There are places that have like pavilions and the businesses operate underneath a roof. They have utility hookups. It's almost like having food trucks, but if there's a storm, they actually just pull things out or they drive it out. You know, if the storm is happening every week, they can't do that. But when there's big seasonal storms, it's certainly something that they can do. That's one potential idea. Another idea we've heard is raising the entire esplanade. You know, that's obviously a long-term thing. It's probably so much cost, and the point to which you would raise it based on future projections, we don't know, and would be extremely impactful. I think that would be a hard project to shoot for, but it can be a long-term goal. A shorter-term solution might be some of the drainage improvements, depending on whether we can work out something that is actually not an extremely expensive short-term solution, much like was already been discussed here today. What other ideas? Are we talking about the right goals here? Are there other goals and other things we should focus on? And are there other ideas that we should bring to the table?
I'll jump in since there's not a lot of comments. So to address for the business owners, I mean, I think they're right. I didn't grow up in town. My wife grew up in Brant Rock, and she talks about, you know, what a wonderful place it is. And it's always fun. You know, we go down with our family, we go to the restaurants, we walk around. I mean, you're sort of limited to where you can walk. We do go and, you know, we'll have dinner and then we'll go out. If it's nice weather, we'll walk, get an ice cream, maybe walk over to the seawall. There's not a lot of access to the ocean unless you walk up to the high road or you walk up to across from the Brant Rock Chapel to be able to do that. People are right. I mean, the flooding is the big issue. You know, it's below sea level. I think it was Steve or Nick mentioned about the drainage. DPW really has to come up with a comprehensive plan about drainage. It may include a pump to really force the water. You know, when there's a storm, they're right. Both of them, when they mention it, I think anyone that actually lives down there, water comes over at a you know, full moon tide. It's rolling down the esplanade from Brant Rock Chapel down in other areas. It does come in there and settle into the esplanade. But, you know, it's a really quaint New England area. And I think that's what, you know, we want to see. You know, we'd love to see new businesses. I know as the town administrator, you know, I want to see other businesses go down there. The businesses that are there now, I think, do very well. I mean, I'm happy that COVID's over. I think people are ecstatic about being outside, going to a restaurant, being able to sit inside. After the 29th, they won't have to wear a mask. And I think this year in particular, we'll see a lot of people going out. People like to go to the ocean. I think it's about getting the right mixes of businesses down there, getting some of the other businesses. There are some vacant storefronts down there that I would love to see revitalized and have some businesses, you know, whether it's art, whether it's restaurants attract more people. You know, you can't get into one restaurant one night, you'll try another restaurant. You know, the walkability is going to be important. You know, I've been to other Brant Rock meetings where, you know, sidewalks are going to be key to getting people to walk around. You know, having the handicap access so you can get baby carriages up and down, so you get the young families to go down there and walk around, take the kids, get an ice cream, go to the seawall, go to one of the restaurants and have dinner. You know, at one time there was a candy store. Estes Candy Factory was down there. There was a bowling alley, but, you know, times change. Today, if I listen to my kids, it would probably be, you know, a place where you can go in and play electronic games if you're looking for some activity like that. Also, people love to live down there. Anyone that lives down there, it's fantastic. People that live by the ocean are not afraid of the storms. They take those It's beautiful to live by the ocean for about 363 days. It's those really 2 days that it's extremely impactful on their lives and a financial hit. So those are just some of my random thoughts. I think we have to work to, how do we do that? How do we expand the business base? How do we get people to develop? You can't have the cart before the horse. We've got to look at, addressing the water. I think the idea of simply filling, if it was a perfect world and we could move all the businesses out, raise it about 15 feet and then put the businesses and the housing back, that's probably not going to happen. There are a number of homes down there that did raise their own homes onto the stilts. There's a number of people with the foundations, with the breakaways. I know a couple of restaurants, have raised themselves up, or, so those are, we need a sort of a combination of plans to address, because being viable, as we continue to see the warming climate, as we continue to see the ocean rise, and we continue to see the severity of the storms, we're getting more and they're more severe. Greg and I talked earlier today, at one time you get 100-year storm once a year. There was sometimes we'll get 3 or 4 of those, sometimes 2 in 1 month. So there's a lot of challenges, and it's good that we're having a forum like this. And to the young woman who spoke earlier, we have the stuff out there. It's on the website. People talk about it. Emails have gone out to folks. The chambers, we made the chamber aware of it. We can't force people to participate, but maybe tonight the people that we hear will be able to go back and talk about it in the community. And, we'll do further outreach. We'll see if we can get WATD involved to really get more people and a lot of the stakeholders, the residents that actually live down there every day. And it's important that we hear from the business owners also. So I just want to say thank you to everyone.
Jason, I'm going to jump in for 1 second for a couple of other things. First, a call out for the Harbor Park and the Harbor Walk. Michael, you missed the sunsets, and you can take the sidewalk connector and go see the sunset occasionally.
Great, thank God. That's why you're our planner, sir.
And the Harbor Master is here on it. So I just wanted to put a plug in. We do have good pedestrian connections just off of the Brant Rock Esplanade that we have been steadily improving over time. You also have the Peter Igo Park. So there are a number of different things that can tie into this. On the questions about particularly the Venus properties, Mr. Crowley had come and talked to me, and his daughter had come to talk to me about containers, about the idea of coming in with a container business that is only there during the late spring, summer, and early fall, and then it is removed and put out of the flood zone in a designated zone. Would that have to be elevated? And we have been in contact with FEMA and Joe Rossi on flood insurance purposes. It does not have to be elevated, but it has to be flood proofed, and the utility connections have to be flood proofed. So that is not something that we had considered before. We've had discussions about food trucks in the past. We had somebody come in early this season and ask about it. I think it is something that we should be working on, because it can be a stopgap measure while we're waiting for the redevelopment of the Brant Rock. We can get some uses on the properties that are currently vacant, et cetera. That's going to take a little discussion on the town side. There's going to have to be some limitations on the hours, et cetera. And we'll have to work with the other businesses. But again, that's something that I think that has adaptability to the flood issues at a lower cost than the elevations and working out, et cetera. The comment about the street lighting is dead on. Nice street lighting on the street is not going to be any use if you're 10 feet up above it. So we would have to come up, and having the street lighting down at that level may not also work because it's going to get storm damage a lot. Whereas if it's up with the upper, at one point we were trying to do a connecting boardwalk down there. I don't know if we can do a connecting boardwalk, but we can at least get elevated porches and walkways, et cetera, get those lit. We could actually hang lighting off of those type of structures that would give better pedestrian lighting down below on the sidewalk level. I did like Jason's idea of having things under the buildings that can come in and out depending on the weather and stuff that could be evacuated quickly. So that's just a couple of things. And then on the pumps and on the drainage, et cetera, DPW has looked at this a number of times, and what I was told is that it would take 5 pumps. And the problem is if we pump it into the harbor during a high tide in a storm event, you're not going to be able to pump the stuff out. They had also looked into pumping it on the other side, the north side of the dike. But again, there's concerns depending on how much we're pumping out, that we have residential properties on the back side of the dike that if we're now pumping storm event floodwaters type into it, we might be adversely affecting them. And that's kind of the reason why on the DPW side, we haven't heard a lot, because they just have not come up with the right solution yet. They have been looking at it. They have been working on it. The harbor master might want to add a few comments in on that. I hope that helps on the business side on what we have been thinking on and what we've been working on. We were specifically trying not to get into the details on recommendations for this meeting, but just to know that we have been working on it, we are thinking about it, and we would like to come up with some solutions.
I think Nanette has her hand raised, so if you can ask you to unmute and you can speak if you'd like.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for your time and efforts. I did grow up in Brant Rock, and I'm still here. And I'm a resident and a business owner. I don't have a storefront, but I'm listed as a business. But I think for me, I mean, I know we're not going to solve everything overnight. I think the safety and the signage is so important. I mean, I live on Island Street, so I drive through the Esplanade probably 6 or 7 times a day, coming and going. And yesterday, a big Jordan's furniture truck came straight down Ocean Street into the wrong side of the Esplanade. 2 days ago, a car from Connecticut came from the Fairview side up on Ocean Street and crossed over onto the wrong side of the Esplanade. So I think for me, the safety thing is huge. We do have a lot of crosswalks, but you really can't see the red. And with the parking so tight and angled, driving through, people just walk out, and before you know it, they're in front of your car. And that is just a huge, huge situation. I don't think it's really realized how many times, pretty much on a daily basis, just exiting the Esplanade, it's like a 2-way stop sign, but people are coming and going. When they're coming from Dyke Road, they don't realize that exiting the Esplanade, the people exiting on the left have a stop sign, the people exiting on the right don't. So they see one person stopped and see another car coming and think they're going to stop, and they plow right toward them. It is total chaos. I do walk every day, and I didn't realize the condition of the sidewalks, and there's a couple of crosswalks that don't have curb cuts, and now I'm pushing a stroller. So I almost have to get off the sidewalk before the crosswalk because I can't bump the stroller down. So I think safety is a huge, huge thing, again, as well as the storm water and all that, obviously. But I think for me, I'd like to put that safety at the top of the list. It's just the things I see, I just put my hands on my head and shake my head. But I too was here when we had the bowling alley and the candy store, and I actually used to babysit for Michael's wife. So I've been here a long time. And it's an awesome place. We just have a beautiful spot, and it would be really nice to get everything revitalized. And I'd love to see these businesses get some funding to help them out. And it's a miracle that they've sustained themselves with the current, the weather and the storms and the water and it's awesome that they're all still here for many, many years. But again, I don't want to go on forever. I want to say thank you. I'm so grateful that we're really addressing all these issues. So yeah, thanks so much.
Amelia, could we stop the screen share so we could see everybody in case there are other hands up and stuff?
Yeah, I saw Laura Brake had her hand up as well.
Thank you. All right, Laura.
Hey, everybody, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, okay, awesome. I wanted to first say thank you to everyone for the presentation. That was awesome. And I'm so happy to hear that this is being addressed. For those of you that don't know me on the call, I am the executive director of the Marshfield Chamber of Commerce. So to hear you guys talking about how there's not a dedicated business organization supporting Brant Rock really hit me in the heart, I will say. I'll be honest.
You have many hats, we know that.
Yeah, I do have many hats, but we are an all volunteer board, and we have one staff member. So we work really hard to support every business owned in Marshfield, and there is more than one. I will take some credit for quite a few people that are on this call tonight, because I did do some reach out, and I'll continue to do that as this moves forward. I actually have a Brant Rock neighbor sitting next to me over here. She's off the camera, but this is her first time participating in one of these calls, and she actually is very engaged and loves it as well. I agree with Michael about the access to the ocean. I think that the beaches in Marshfield are awesome. And that is one of the reasons why a lot of people come here, and people want to go to the beach, and then they want to eat, and they want to drink, and they want to walk around, and they want to shop. This is a situation of what comes first, the chicken or the egg. I think Michael also alluded to that a little bit. We have this huge problem, and we want to support these businesses, and we want to support the residents, but what comes first? So I know that you presented the timeline on there, and it looks like this project will be ending in August. But I'm curious what happens after that. And I think that that's probably a question for Michael and Greg, from the town perspective of what does it look like once we all, take these polls and come up with these ideas and we get all this feedback. Where do we go from there? What does this look like? What does Brant Rock look like 5 to 10 years from now? Is this something that can be completed in that timeline? I heard you say that, that these are small short-term goals. And I love that. But piggybacking off of what the Drosopolis brothers, one of them, I'm sorry, I forget which one it was, but they're both here, said, if we put in lights and we put in signage, and then, they or the Crowleys or whoever, the people that own the jetty decide to build up their business, how is that all going to fit in? So as the experts, I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and before Mike or Greg answer, I just want to say briefly, it is on us to be able to create a very actionable plan that hopefully has things that are short-term items, that are the low-hanging fruit, that can be done fast. That might even be done before we wrap up this study. Part of our goal is to get key stakeholders like all of you involved actively in this next round. So is it Laura or Lara?
Laura.
It's Lara.
Lara, you are going to be an essential part of this. So your point about the businesses and the representation that the chamber has, I want you to meet with a subject matter expert who talks about all sorts of retail and restaurant revitalization, funding programs, grant programs, facade enhancement programs, all sorts of things, tax savings, what you name it. That should be something that If you don't have the full toolbox, or even if you do, they help to ratify and support and give you more examples of that. To Nanette's question about safety, it's quite obvious that there's all sorts of transportation safety issues. And Michael himself said it can be difficult to go. I want to go to some place. It would be nice to stroll around, and there's problems with the infrastructure. Nanette mentioned the lack of curb ramps, like the strange two-way stop. There is very little standard that infrastructure in and around the Esplanade that checks any modern design standards or safety requirements of roadway infrastructure. Stantec, our team happens to be the subject matter experts in mobility. We're going to dive in on that. We're going to have a session that talks specifically about all of these problems. I've already been mapping it. There's tons of them. We're going to get into that. Like I said already, the stormwater folks, we're going to really try amongst as many of these categories of goals and others to really give you something that you can run with. And again, this isn't on the town to pay for everything. Part of the goal here is to identify federal, state, and new foundational and grant program resources that have been popping up since COVID began that are out there thanks to all sorts of federal spending. Take advantage of that stuff. Like, make the Esplanade be great, because it is an economic engine for Marshfield.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments, concerns that haven't been voiced here today?
I guess just one real quick. Does the technical assistance also include the actual beach area of Brant Rock? Is that involved or tied in any direction at all? I guess kind of making it more, I know the accessible, which is a great point, like accessing the beach, but in terms of the beach itself, any of those funds be attributed to that?
Yeah, so I mean, this is all planning. So to the extent that we can talk with you specifically about what might be a restoration grant or an access grant or physical infrastructure that might be able to make that more accessible, that's something we can do at least at a high level. Just so everybody knows, while our core study area is where we did the diagnostics, we're not missing out on the fact that there's a broader area that certainly goes down to the marina, that includes the waterfront park and the walkways, that includes the beach, that includes the light, all that kind of stuff. So I think anything is on the table. I can't necessarily, for a business related plan, come up with specifics related to the beach environment, but as they are impacting business, we can certainly talk about, at least at a high level, some programs and plans for that.
Great.
Jason, I'm going to jump in for a second. Stephen, we are involved in a multi-year beach nourishment effort. We are having difficulties with the property owners providing us with the easements we need in order to put material on the beach. There have been designated beaches. CZM has helped fund the 3-year study scientifically with Woods Hole Group that has identified the beaches that should be renourished. And at the moment, we're kind of bogged down because we're not getting people to sign, all the property owners. We need all the property owners in the area to sign off on their property from the seawall out to the sea. That's where we need the easements. So I can't give you any more information on that at the moment, because at the moment we're stuck. We have done work. We are working on the permitting side of things, but in order to get funding, because we're going to need federal money, that's as well as town money, we need everybody, all those property owners, to sign off, or we get into a taking situation, which will be a number of years and very expensive for the town. And then for the town to then pay for the beach material, you're asking a lot from residents who aren't direct beach, front owners.
Have these been approached to the residents as in past years, or is this something that's just been brought to their attention?
This has been going on for 3 years. We've had 3
Really?
sets of public meetings. We've put out mailings. We have been trying.
Sugar.
So just so you know, it's not like we're not we've been working on it, but we need cooperation in order to get some of this stuff done.
I appreciate you letting me know that. Thank you.
Can we get a list of these people's names so we can influence them to make right decisions?
You would have to ask the selectmen and town council on that. I do not feel comfortable because it is a volunteer effort, giving out names or addresses.
Okay.
It looks like Sandra has raised her hand.
Yep, I just wanted to point out that the still resiliently grants frequently asked questions that I printed off the town's website does not have Brant Rock Beach as beaches identified. So I did want to make that point, that we were not part of that. Thank you.
And that is correct. It's Sunrise, Lower Wrexham, Wrexham Beach, and Bay Ave were the areas that were identified that the beach nourishment, the material would actually stay longer than a year.
Yeah, and Winslow Avenue Beach also.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to clarify the previous speaker's point, it sounded like you were saying that Brant Rock might be part of that nourishment, but they're not.
But material will be moving offshore, and part of the problem with the beaches is there is no material available to move. We're talking about putting 90 feet of material out from the seawall. There will be material moving up and down the coast depending on where the breaks are. And the CZM Woods Hole Group study does identify where those breaks are and why certain areas did not get beach nourishment proposed.
Thank you. I assumed it was something like that. Thank you for clarifying.
You're welcome.
All right. So,
Steve Darcy has joined us. Steve, do you want to say anything? And after that, Cindy has raised her hand.
great.
Steve is remaining silent, so I guess Cindy, you got the floor.
Hi. Hi, everybody. It's great to see so many people on, but I noticed you keep talking about adding more businesses and more activity in the Esplanade, and we already have a situation with parking, and I'm just hoping people will take that into consideration of what are we going to do for more parking. And about accessibility to our beaches, as I'm the beach administrator for the town, we do have a surf wheelchair that is available if somebody should need it. You can find my number on the website, but it's very hard in that area to do a any type of handicap ramp to get down to the beach. We did ask for that when they redesigned North Street, but we're told we could not do that because of the slope, and we've only got so much space. So we're hoping we can find maybe some way to address that.
That's that last comment is a great comment, and I think we may want to actually be adding a goal, since it's come up here a little bit about beach access. You know, it is half the reason why people come, and it is obviously a hurdle. So, you know, that would be a suggestion I'd have. With regards to parking, yeah, I mean, that's a goal already. It's tied into beach access, it's tied into business access. And we are working on coming up at least with some ideas on how to be able to address that. But it can be complicated for sure.
Oh, yeah.
The best things to do is that, you know, the parking in that area is sort of treated more as a shared resource because, you know, one business may not have enough, another one may have excess, but for everybody's mutual benefit. So we'll work through a number of options for that as well.
Thank you.
We do have a chat comment from Steve Darcy. There's background noise, so he was trying to not give us a lot of background noise. And Jason, I believe we have another hand up.
Yeah. Nick acting.
Yeah, I
Shannon
just want
acting
to.
as Nick.
Yeah, just want to comment on the part. I know residents are concerned about parking. We all are as business owners as well. But with my brothers and I project, we'll be contributing to. I think my brother has a more accurate number on this. I think well over 300 parking spaces for the town. in the Brant Rock area when we proceed with our project. So if any residents have any issues with parking, we are creating over 300 parking spaces.
And that give or take, that's also based on of what we're allotted and the square footage of what we're able to do so, based on conservation restrictions, et cetera. But from some of the preliminary plans that we've created and we're able to kind of maximize, it was roughly right around 300 spaces. And I know that's a big eye opener, as we all can attest that down here is pretty tough for parking. But yeah, it looks good.
And just so you all know, I mean, even the Esplanade areas itself, there's a lot of pavement areas that are a little wide, as we heard earlier, Jordan's truck going the wrong way. That there's some opportunities to even add parking in the public realm while expanding uses for walking and public space. So we'll work through as many concepts for that as possible. We want to be able to equip you guys with ideas that you can then kind of take to actual projects. Steve Darcy asked about, will we be able to make projects be identified in the short and long term? And absolutely, as we prioritize things that are able to be launched quicker, quick hit, and in the short term, they'll be identified. And many of the things we're talking about here today may indeed be longer term.
Great.
Other thoughts, questions, concerns? We don't want to keep you guys all night long, but we're happy to stay.
All right, I think you're good.
So thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Like I said, we'll, through Greg, be back in touch again. We're going to be scheduling that workshop on project ideation just in the next, hopefully a few weeks, even before we get to the 4th. That's going to be pretty important for us to be able to work through ideas with you. That may not be in person. I can't really be sure right now, but you will all hear about it. And hopefully Lara and others can spread the word to get as many other participants in that process as is possible. We'll follow up everybody by email, a quick PDF of these slides if you like. And we'll also try to summarize the voting on the goals that occurred earlier. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
You too.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good night.